terminology and sophisticated lists and so forth and so on, we tend to remember a good story. And I think that's probably as a 44-year-old memory of mine, which actually turned out to be, doesn't have all the details, but I was happy to see, didn't get it wrong anyway, that's good. Okay, so now we go back to Lamp So Bright. I checked the early ones where I had some qualms, and Roger Jackson's translations were actually fine. He's, as I said before, a very capable scholar. And so I stick with my interpretation of the preceding ones, but his translations were fine. So we continue on now. Also, as stated in the Perfection of Wisdom in 8,000 verses, the circling of all sentient beings because of grasping at I and mine is samsara. So this circling about in the cycle of aging, sickness, and death, and so forth, this is all, the root cause is grasping at I and mine. Okay, familiar. The root delusion. The ultimate root of all flaws is connate self-grasping. Self-grasping means reification of the self, reification of oneself. Or the connate grasping at I. So it's exactly what we did in the last meditation. A sense of I comes up, no problem. I'm a person, I'm talking, there's Michelle, there's Jeffrey, and so forth. But then the reification of, well, that's the problem. In general, the mind that has the thought I am operates in one of three ways. One, takes the I as distinguished by being truly existent. So one way of thinking I am is to reify yourself. I really am. Whatever. Yeah, I am. I'm here. I'm really here, inherently here. I'm absolutely here. We're familiar with that. That's common. But it's not the only way that we can apprehend the self. The second way is the mind that takes the I as not truly existent. That sees that the I that is designated, that is conceived, is not truly existent. Or takes it as a mere name or merely imputed by thought, seeing that one's existence is purely nominal, or merely imputed by thought, conceptually designated. So, I remember having just a one-on-one conversation with Kyabje Tijin Rinpoche, the junior tutor of the His Dalai Lama. This was also about 42 years ago. And he was discussing this, explaining it a bit to me. And he was pointing out some, I don't remember the exact details, but I do remember the gist of it. And he was saying that all phenomena are empty of inherent nature. Like, we didn't have cell phones back then, but like, whatever. Like your robe. The robe is yours. The robe is yours. Well, now, 44 years later, the cell phone's mine, right? But it's mine. That's a true statement. It's mine. But only because we agree. Just because we say it and we agree, therefore it's mine. But if we stop saying that, then it's not. So it is mine only because we've conceptually, I think this is mine, and other people agree, therefore it is. Or I say this is mine, which one's mine? Oh, it's not that one. No, it looks like, no, this is mine. And that's it. But as soon as we shift the designation, that reality just evaporates. And he's saying all phenomena are like that. And when I listened to him, I thought, but everything else is different. Asteroids, planets, dinosaurs. And they don't stop becoming dinosaurs just by not calling them dinosaurs anymore. So he suggested that in fact, like this, the minus of the cell phone, everything else, merely nominal. Well, for a brilliant mind, you just follow the implications and you see it. Well, that's true. Very brief example. Years later, 1985 or so, 1985, when I was studying physics and really specifically studying the energy of the vacuum and calculating the energy density of the vacuum. Okay, it's hard, but I studied enough mathematics, I could do it. But I found the text that showed the equations of how do you calculate the energy density of the vacuum, of empty space. How much energy is there in a cubic centimeter of empty space? And as I recall, I think my memory is pretty clear here, this is only 30 years ago instead of 42, it was 4 equations. 4 equations. Boom, boom, and each one is, just a line and a half. Boom, 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 boom. Finished. I looked at that, and then it gave the right answer at the end. I mean, the 4th equation, there it is. And if you do the straight equations, the energy density is infinite. Infinite energy density. And there it was. And I looked at that. And then I went to my mentor and said, I don't get that at all. I mean, I can read the first line, but I just don't get that. And he said, well, okay, we'll unpack it. And so with him, and I think maybe another professor who knew their physics and their mathematics inside and out, they took me through it step by step. And we unpacked 4 equations he could pack into the middle of 1 page. And I unpacked that with prose explanation, so I was telling myself how I understood it, into 30 pages. 30 pages. And with equation upon equation, but I needed to demonstrate to myself, I understand every single step here. I'm not brainwashed, I'm not just saying, monkey see, monkey do, but I think it was about 30 pages of unpacking those 4 equations, and each time explaining, and this is how this next one follows, this is how this one follows. Nobody else needed to hear that, but I did, because I'm not very good at math. But then I did get to the end, and then when I got to it's infinite, I said, I got it. Now I understand it. But for me it was 30 pages of equations and prose explanation, whereas for a really good mathematician, I met one years later and showed him my 30 pages. And he was a professionally trained mathematician. And he said, I don't know what you concluded to, that was obvious on the first page. Good. It was obvious to him, it wasn't obvious to me, otherwise I would have just read those 4 equations and said, I got it. So that was a service. And that, a person who really well trained, he sees, got it. And you're finished in 5 minutes. For me, it was probably a month or 2 of working through those 30 pages and explaining each step of the way. It's similar. It's similar, right? And so, for a person like Kyabje Tijin Rinpoche, the junior tutor of His Holiness, he would see, oh yeah, the minus of the cell phone is not found among its parts, it's not separate. It's simply imputed upon that which is not mine. Yep, everything else the same. I'm serious. If you have that kind of brilliance, you see it. Oh, you didn't get that. Okay, well then we'll take more examples. And then you take it step by step, and you spend 4 years studying Madhyamaka alone in the monastic universities to Tibet. Okay, back to the story. So there's the second way. Takes the I as not truly existent. It takes it as a mere name or merely imputed by thought. And the third mode, and I covered this earlier, maybe it will ring a bell. The third mode does not take the I as real in either of those 2 ways. Doesn't see the I as inherently existent and doesn't see the I as being merely conceptually designated. Neither one. It's undifferentiated. Right? Of these 3 ways of thinking of I, the last, the third one, of just undifferentiated, not critical, not locking into it as being inherently existent or empty of inherent nature. The last is the designation validly applied to some mere conventional I. It's just working with, where's Marianne? Yeah, she's over there. And carrying on. Just like that. Or in a dream. You could be in a lucid dream. Right? This is a very good example. You could be in a lucid dream, and in a lucid dream, Brendan could appear over there and said, Brendan, have you seen Mary Kay? And I'm lucid. Brendan doesn't even exist because he's just an apparition to my mind, but it looks like Brendan. And so Brendan can ask me, the lucid dreamer, have you seen Mary Kay? In the context of this dream, because that's where I am, but I'm completely lucid. I said, yeah, Brendan, of course. Haven't you seen her? She's right over there. No delusion. I know I'm dreaming, but within this context, Brendan is over there. Would you like to know who he is? He's called Brendan. Her name is Mary Kay. Get to know each other. But it's light. It's just nominal. Right? That would be using the words. In that case, you're actually seeing the emptiness of it. But you could use the words even without seeing the emptiness and just not reify, be hovering, floating a bit. Okay? So, The middle, and that is the one who sees the I as not truly existent, occurs only in the mind stream of one who has definitely attained the Madhyamaka view. Such a person has realized emptiness. Only they actually see the I as not inherently existent and does not occur in others. If you don't realize it, then there you go. And the first is grasping at a self of persons. Reifying the self of persons. Taking another person as one's referent object, what you're focusing on, and grasping that as truly existent, another person, is grasping at a self of persons. Remember, there's the self or identity of phenomena and the self of persons. These are the two categories. If you're focusing on someone else and you reify them, that's called grasping at a self or reifying a self of persons, but it is not the connate grasping at I. The connate grasping of I is focused only on yourself. Okay? It's simply a definitional issue. So we don't need to make a big deal of this. But the nanzen, it's called in Tibetan, grasping to the I, that's only you. But kansakidansin, kansikida, dembara zimba, grasping to the true existence of the self of people. Well, that could be anybody. Okay, this is just terminological finessing. The connate grasping at I, this is very technical speech, or the view of the transitory, and that's this whole composite, this aggregation of transitory bodily processes, bodily qualities, mental events, all of them in a state of transition, all of them in a state of flux. All right. The view of the transitory as being inherently existent. Okay, I mean, a lot is packed into that. Jiksokla is called in Tibetan. Okay, grasping to the Jiksokla, the composite of phenomena that are in the process of being destroyed. So the connate grasping at I, which is also called the view of the transitory, the delusional reifying view of the transitory, is the afflictive discrimination that grasps as inherently existent the object that has been intended, the object you're focusing on, the I of one's own mind stream. Okay, it's dense, but hopefully it's clear. And the I of one's own mind stream, that's just what we were looking at several minutes ago. That latter is produced by its own cause. This connate grasping to the I is produced by its own cause. That is, it's just a habit. Earlier propensities lead to it happening again, which store more propensities and lead to it happening again. That latter is produced by its own cause, a subtle grasping at the self of phenomena. This is very important. This is a Madhyamaka theme, perfection of wisdom theme, that I think is very deep, very important, and is mostly not to be found, hardly to be found in the Pali Canon or in the Theravada tradition. In the Pali Canon, the Theravada tradition, the kind of analysis, the Buddha himself does it. Look through all your body parts. Do you see anything that is I, right? Individually or collectively. Look through all your mental process, your feelings, your discernments, mental visions, thoughts, emotions, and so forth. Do you see any of them, or any of them individually, or all of them collectively you? Okay, how about the complex of this whole complex array of bodily and mental events, individually or collectively, are any of them you? And the answer is no, all the way through. And then you can ask, okay, apart from these five aggregates of form and mental events and so forth, apart from them, setting them all aside with all their complex interactions, all the enormously complex interactions of the brain, almost inconceivably complex, apart from all of that, do you exist as something separate from that, autonomous from, apart from? No evidence. No evidence. Okay. And on that basis, you can see the five aggregates are empty of the self, and the self does not exist as something apart from them, independent of them. Now that I think all Theravada Buddhists would accept, with really good sound reasoning. Does that mean that the self doesn't exist at all? One could easily leap to that conclusion, then you've leapt into nihilism. Right? And they don't do that. Okay, they don't do that. I mean, most Theravada Buddhists are certainly not nihilists. And Buddha was certainly not advocating nihilism. How you do reinstate the self conventionally? Well, different Theravadins have different views there. But I won't linger there. But there's a lot of agreement there, right? Non-self, emptiness of self, right? None of the parts are the self, the whole aggregation aggregate of body-mind is empty of some autonomous self, an agent, a person, like that. But that's pretty much where the analysis stops. Because by and large, apart from the Bhikkhuni Vajira and then Nagasena, the chariot, both times using the chariot as the analogy, by and large, it is assumed, without being challenged, that the five skandhas, your physical form, your whole physical aggregate, and your feelings, and your discernments, and all mental formations, and all your six modes of consciousness, and the entire physical world around you, are inherently real. It's metaphysical realism. It's not something you learn from the Pali Canon, like you just got indoctrinated into a Buddhist worldview, or you learn from the Theravada interpretation of the Pali Canon. It's an assumption we had already, and it's not very explicitly challenged in the Pali Canon or the Theravada. By and large, it's kind of implicitly or explicitly accepted, right? But then we do have Nagasena coming along and saying, challenging the king, did you walk here? Because I didn't find the chariot anywhere, neither among its parts nor apart from its parts. He's doing exactly the same analysis that is commonly done in all schools of Buddhism with respect to the self, the person, and our relationship with our body-mind. And then he's doing this like, whoa, you just stepped outside the box. And you did this to a chariot. And you're actually mocking the king, doing it, which Galileo did to the Pope. It's generally not a good idea. They'll send you to a room, stay in your room, you're grounded for life. That's what happened to Galileo. But Nagasena then took that same reasoning and applied it to the chariot. Well, if you applied it to the chariot, where do you stop? Where do you stop? Is there something special about chariots? And the answer from the Madhyamaka perspective, that's just as smooth as segue into the perfection of wisdom, the Madhyamaka, and all of that. And it's right there from a Shravaka Arhat, Nagasena. And interestingly, in the first East-West dialogue between a Buddhist and a representative of Western culture, a Greek king. Very interesting. And in the Heart Sutra, having recognized that the self, the person, is empty of inherent nature, the five skandhas too are empty of inherent nature. Oh, now the avalanche has started now. Now the avalanche has started. Nagasena started with throwing the pebble of a chariot. And then just watch the pebbles fall. I mean, what stands up to that avalanche? Elementary particles, galaxies, space, time, matter, energy. What stands up to that kind of ontological analysis of parts and wholes? And any entity that has attributes gets cut down with the same analysis. Which means that the self, you, I, we're no more empty than a chariot, or a piece of lead, or a planet, a galaxy, or a universe. No more, no less. And for exactly the same reason. So what the Panchen Rinpoche is saying here is you may have gained some insight into the emptiness of yourself, which after all is a bit abstract. And we find neuroscientists saying there's no self. We find psychologists, some academic psychologists saying the word self has no referent. It's not that hard to draw that conclusion. And so forth. But even if you have that insight, some insight into the emptiness of your own inherent nature, that you exist only nominally, if you're still reifying your body, reassigning your feelings, your thoughts, your emotions, your activities and states of consciousness, if you're still reifying them, then the great demon of reification will come back and bite you in the ass. It's going to get you from behind. Because it's still there, it's unquestioned. You've just lopped it's like a weed. I spent hundreds of hours pulling weeds at 50 cents an hour when I was a teenager. And I know very well if you just pull, we all know this, you just pull off the top, the easy part, so the guy who's paying you doesn't see it anymore. Just, pull it off, and the root's perfectly happy down below. You stay employed that way. Can you come back? Those doggone weeds came back. Oh, really? So that's it. You've cut off the part above ground, and the whole root system of reifying your body and mind, your five skandhas, untouched. And that's why he's saying, if you have not eradicated the reification of your skandhas, the reification of self-will return. That's what he's saying right here. I think it's very compelling. I mean, this is for us to evaluate each of us. I'm not here to just tell you this is the so and you have to believe me, but I find that very compelling. So as, that latter is produced by its own cause, a subtle grasping of the self of phenomena. Again, I'm always going to say the identity of phenomena, but self, many people accept that, fine, as long as they know what it means. But it's something that we connately grasp to, the inherent nature, the identity of all types of phenomena. It's just a nominal difference. I'm not going to make a big deal out of it. As stated by the Guardian Nagarjuna, as long as there's grasping at the aggregates, grasping here means reification of. There will be grasping at an I in them. There will be reification of the I amongst the aggregates. When there is grasping at I, or reification of I, there is also karma. That empowers the activation of karma that propels you from lifetime to lifetime, and through karma there is rebirth. Very pithy, very to the point, and I find it very compelling. Since it is the root of samsara, one cannot abandon self-grasping without repudiating the fixated object that is the object of that grasping. For the king of reasoning, Dharmakirti states, this is very, very dense. It's clear, it's straight, but he's compacting an awful lot in a few words. It's very important. And that is so we reify all kinds of stuff. Okay? But then we're not reifying when we're in deep dreamless sleep. Your conceptual mind is dormant. So you're not reifying yourself or sleep or anything else. You're just asleep, right? Go into deep samadhi. You may not be reifying anything in there. Conceptual mind shut down. You're not labeling, you're not conceiving, and so forth. Or you may just learn how to just so rest. Let's say in open presence. Just totally rest. Now with your eyes wide open, your senses all wide open. And just totally rest. And think maybe this is Dzogchen. I'm vivid, I'm clear, I'm discerning, I'm totally at rest. Whatever thoughts are coming up, I just let them arise and pass. And I'm just resting here in this openness, this spaciousness, utterly at ease. Mental afflictions come up, they don't afflict. I'm seeing appearances, and I'm not reifying anything, and maybe I'm a vidyadhara. Okay? Very easy to think. Because for that time, as far as you can tell, you're not grasping at or reifying anything. Right? So you can say, well, this was much easier than Madhyamaka. I just stopped grasping. I just turned off the switch, I turned off the motor of reification, and I'm just resting here. The fool on the hill, like that. Is it enough? That's what he's getting at right here. And the answer comes from one of the greatest epistemologists and logicians in the whole history of Indian Buddhism, Dharmakirti. And the answer is it's not enough. It's not enough to stop reifying. Any more than it's enough to stop smoking. Or I saw an article yesterday, the biggest losers, people who are extremely overweight, and then they have a contest to see who can lose the most weight. And that's a contest, people find that entertaining, I guess, But then when the show's over and somebody got the prize for being the biggest loser, what happens to the people that lost 300, 400 pounds? Pretty much they get it back. They lost it, they found it again, And so it wasn't enough to lose the weight. It wasn't enough to stop eating too much. It's not enough to stop smoking. It's not enough to stop drinking. You have to know this will kill me. You have to know it so compellingly that knowing that will kill me, know that this will destroy my health, know that this will, have a lot of negative impact for everybody around me who loves me. You have to know that and not just stop. Maybe somebody says, you stop or I'll punish you. Okay, I'll stop until that person goes away. Oh good, now I won't be punished. Not enough to stop. And this is what Dharmakirti, this is what Panchen Lozang is saying. At this point I have to haul out one of my favorite psychological jokes. At least half of you heard it. Please laugh at the appropriate time. The little boy who thought he was a kernel of corn. You remember? It's a great story. But it exactly illustrates this point. Okay? It really does. It's a nice joke, it's funny. But it's a good joke because it's smart. So in the story comes everybody, I'm sure somebody listening by podcast doesn't know I'm about to say, I'm about to entertain you. Everybody else, be patient. There was a little boy who had the psychosis of believing delusionally that he was a kernel of corn, a little grain of corn. And his parents, who were living out on a farm, they were upset. His son was dysfunctional, thinking he's a kernel of corn. So they sent him off to a mental institute, mental asylum. He got intensive sustained therapy. And eventually they released him from the asylum. He said, "We think your son is fine." And so then the son was released. He comes back home. His parents greet him with open arms, happy to see little Johnny is home. And they ask him first off, "Johnny, do you think you're a kernel of corn?" He said, No. I'm fine. I'm not a kernel of corn." So then they're relieved. Everybody's happy, hanging out. Until a few days later, Johnny comes rushing in, slams the screen door behind him. He's trembling, he's quaking, obviously terrified out of his wits. And his parents come and said, "Oh, Johnny, you don't think that you're a kernel of corn again, do you?" And he said, "No, but the chickens out there don't know that." It's good, yeah? And it perfectly illustrates this point, that he'd stopped for a while. The therapist told him, "Don't think you're a kernel of corn, you're not a kernel of corn, don't think that, don't think that. People get upset, your parents make them really unhappy, they're freaking out, stop thinking that, stop thinking that." He said, and then he learned, okay, I'll stop thinking that. Until he's out among the chickens. And he hasn't realized that he's not a kernel of corn, he just stopped thinking that way. But he couldn't persuade the chickens to not identify him as a kernel of corn. And therefore, he's panic-stricken. Right? You have to realize that that self that you apprehend when you reify yourself doesn't exist at all. It's not enough to stop reifying. When you do reify, and you identify how you appear to yourself, how you are conceived by yourself, when you're reifying yourself, when you see that that reified self that you're identifying with does not exist at all, which of course is not to say you don't exist at all, but the object of your self-concept when you're reifying yourself, that doesn't exist at all. Like the Napoleon right here sitting on this couch, or this chair. When you realize that, then you won't grasp to that which you know to be non-existent. Because you're really free of it. Once you know that there is no such self, then you won't grasp onto that which you know doesn't exist. That's what he's getting at. It's a really crucial point. And in Tibetan Buddhism, it's often overlooked. We get phrases like Zimbajung the Tawa met among the four partings from the four types of craving from the Sakya tradition. If grasping occurs, there is no view. Well, that is true. That is true. If reification occurs, you don't have the view of the middle way. That is true. But if you just stop grasping, that doesn't mean you have the view. It just means for a while you stop grasping. Maybe you're comatose. Maybe you've had general anesthesia. Maybe you're just sitting like the fool on the hill with a blank mind, gazing into the sky with a happy smile. But if you haven't realized that you, for starters, do not exist inherently, then it will come back. It will come back. And one easy way for it to come back is come out of your cave and have somebody insult you. And see what comes up. Okay. That took a long time, we're already... Okay, but let's quote Dhammakirti. I think we can go faster from the future, but hopefully this was meaningful. I know I went this tangent, but it was intentional. And the whole point here is that we're not here as an intellectual exercise. We don't need to be in retreat for that. We could do an online course. There's nothing wrong with online courses. But nobody needs to come here and travel halfway around the world and so forth to have an intellectual course on Madhyamaka. There are many good books, many good online courses, really, really good, right? Don't need that. This is a place where we can receive teaching and immediately integrate them with practice and have nothing else to do. No other demands on our time. That's really making the best use of this time here. This is not a time just to acquire information for the sake of information. So Dhammakirti states, without repudiating or seeing the absence of its object, it is referring to the reifying mind that reifies oneself. Without repudiating its object, without seeing the absence of its object, you will not abandon, you will not be able to abandon self-grasping or reification. So the fixated objects of grasping at a truly existent individual, here's one. Grasping at a truly existent I, so individual is more generic, you, he, they, and so forth. Grasping at truly existent I, that's up close and personal, oneself. grasping at a truly existent person, so individual and person, drawing a subtle distinction there. These are respectively, the fixated object is a truly existent individual, a truly existent I, and a truly existent person. Thus it is necessary to eradicate them. Okay, so we didn't make much headway in the text, but I think now that we've kind of laid groundwork, we can move more quickly. And in fact, the very next one is going into practice. Because he's here also, this is meditation manual. This is not a Madhyamaka treatise just to learn how to debate and all of that and get a theoretical understanding. He's giving you just enough theory to put it right into practice, and that's where he's going immediately. And that's where we'll go tomorrow. As for eradicating them, they are to be viewed as not truly existent, because having ascertained that a person is not truly existent, one accustoms oneself to that view and reverses grasping at the person as truly existent. For these reasons, I will first demonstrate on the basis of experiential pith instructions. Now we know it's about practice. The way the object of negation appears and the way it is grasped. Okay? So he's really set this up. And now he's ready to go right into pith instructions. Whenever you see that term, menga in Tibetan or upadesha in Sanskrit, you know, okay, this is where the rubber hits the road. Here's where you take the theory, the categories, the nomenclature, and so forth. And now here's how you apply it. Here's how you take the medicine and actually can really get some benefit. Okay? Hola, so kept you on a little bit late. But I won't apologize because I don't feel sorry. Enjoy your evening. See you tomorrow.